A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Galatians. When the appointed time came, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born a subject of the law, to redeem the subjects of the law, and to enable us to be adopted as sons. The proof that you are sons is that God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit that cries, Abba, Father. And it is this that makes you a son. You are not a slave anymore, and if God has made you a son, then he has made you heir. There is so much that could be said about this feast day and the scriptures given to us by the Church in Mass for this feast day. But I would like us to consider for just a few moments that reading which I have just read, which is the second reading of the Mass, that reading taken from St. Paul's letter to the Galatians, where St. Paul says this. Let me read again just one line. When the appointed time came, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born a subject of the law, to redeem the subjects of the law and to enable us to be adopted as sons. This text is really important for a few reasons. Firstly, it is the earliest mention of Our Lady that we find in the scriptures. Now, the letter to the Galatians was written just some 10 years or so after Jesus had ascended into heaven. So this is a very early piece of the New Testament. And what's more, it is St. Paul's sole mention of Our Lady in all of his writings. So these few words of his are really worth paying attention to. God sent his Son, born of a woman. God sent his Son, born of a woman. Now there, Paul is telling us that the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God, has been sent by the Father. And that second person of the Trinity, who was given the name Jesus at his incarnation, now that second person of the Trinity was born of a woman. This gets to the very heart of Jesus' identity. He is both God and man. He is truly God. God sent his Son. And he is truly man, born of a woman. But this truth, which we in the Church now take for granted, was passionately debated in the early days of Christianity. And we are pretty used to debates in the Church today, aren't we? We have debated in recent years the way that the Missal is translated. We're having ongoing discussions at the moment about the way our new lectionary is being translated. There are differences of opinion at the moment of when the Sunday obligation should be reintroduced. We are used to these debates, these discussions taking place. But as the question of Jesus' divinity is such a central truth of our faith, unlike the way texts are translated or even the Sunday obligation, this central truth of Jesus' divinity is so important that it had to be resolved definitively. And so a church council was called at Ephesus during the early 5th century. And at that council, as at all councils, a number of opinions were heard, including the view that Jesus was not divine when he was born, but that later on in his life, God adopted him, as it were, and that at that point, Jesus became divine. That opinion and others were voiced. And that would have made Mary the mother of a man, who maybe later became divine, but it would have meant that she wasn't the mother of the divine man. But instead, the Council of the Ephesus taught with authority that God became man at the moment of his conception in Our Lady's womb. And to safeguard this truth, the Council Fathers described Mary as the Theotokos, the Mother of God. And here, by saying something about Mary, the Church protected a truth about Jesus Christ, a truth that we celebrated not long ago on Christmas morning. So this most wonderful, most beautiful of titles, the title of Mother of God, presents to us both the core identity of this holiest of women and also the core truth of he who is truly her Son according to the flesh. And on this great feast, which consecrates this new year to the Lord, we venerate Mary as the Mother of God. And in doing so, we better understand the gift of her Son who has been given to us.